But I would say that the best way to measure it when you're talking about these white liberals who value decorum over everything else are the people that lined up behind somebody like Pete Buttigieg back in 2020, 2019. Because that was as vapid an example of a plucked from obscurity, built through McKinsey, Manchurian candidate who happened to be gay. And again, they use that little caveat because if you ever heard him speak, he sounds like a robot. But for them, it's pleasant. He says the pleasant things. I want Medicare for all who wants it. I'm like, anyone who buys into that are people that already live extremely comfortable lives. Now, unfortunately, and this is the reality of the titanic political shift that occurred in 2015, 2016. And this is also one of the things that I don't ever want anyone to forget about what Jen's opponent, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, did as head of the DNC. Bernie Sanders, with all of his flaws, was somebody who was going to change the working class narrative in this country had he become president in 2016. By him going through what he went through and what the party ultimately did on Debbie's behalf to ensure that Hillary got the nomination by hook or crook and Trump ends up winning, there was a substantial amount of working class people in this country that moved over to Trump, and they haven't left him since. And so now, if you ever have the stomach to tolerate any form of corporate media, specifically MSNBC, what you will notice is that all of the people led by the likes of Nicole Wallace, Bill Kristol, Jennifer Rubin, David Frum, and the like, these were all Bushies of the highest order. And now they are as firmly up Joe Biden's ass as you could possibly be. And everyone is just accepting of it. Perfectly normal. You know, the Republicans are terrible. You know, we're not so good either, but the Republicans are worse. We are getting to a point now where I think people are just looking at everything that's going on and saying, fuck it, I don't want this anymore. And once you have a vote of no confidence, you can't get it back.
I don't see how he can possibly win Michigan. I think it's gone. Like, I think that's just, that ship sailed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is going to be a deeply unpopular opinion with you, but I'm not voting for either of them. I'm not voting.
I'm not. Oh, don't think that's unpopular with me. I've made my thing fair. Oh, no. I support Dr. Cornel West because I like that message. And at the end of the day, depending on who is on my ballot, I will likely vote for Jill Stein just because I know the Greens will be on my ballot. That is not unpopular here. There is no universe where I'm voting for Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you know this. I ran for Congress in 2018 and I was one of the Justice Democrats. I was in that same sort of class with AOC, right, Ilhan, et cetera. And something that really stunned me, which is why I no longer believe in electoral politics, period. So I don't think that having more AOCs and more Ilhan Omars is going to change anything because it's a sausage factory. And the thing that really struck me is that in those calls with the Justice Democrats, in order to get the endorsement, the one thing you had to swear is that you wouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi to be speaker. And I lost and I was devastated. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I think that being in Congress is a complete waste of time for anyone who actually has a heart and a brain and has the two connected. But they all voted for Nancy Pelosi, like just like that. And I was like, oh, I know. And I would have done the same. Obviously, I would.
Why do you think you would have done the same? I don't think you would have done the same.
I would. I'll tell you. I can speak for myself, Jen.
Yeah, you think you would have.
To speak for me.
No. I'm just saying. It's upsetting.
I know myself, and I know the sausage factory. Just like white supremacy is a sausage factory. You get into the sausage factory, and you come out as sausage. And so it is no shade. I was having a conversation not long ago with Linda Sarsour. I don't know if you know Linda. Yeah. And we were talking about like running for office. And she was like, I would never do it because if there were like 200s of you and me, then we could do it with 200s, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you just get eaten up alive, you know? And so I appreciate those of you who still believe that there can be change from within. And I applaud you. I think it takes.
Oh, I don't think that. Yeah. I don't think that's not what I think.
Yeah.
I think that if you don't bring the outside people inside, then we're getting nothing done. I actually don't think that electoral politics is that anything. I know that it's just kind of, it's a last resort that is failing in a lot of ways. So yeah, I mean, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I'm just dealing with the head of a snake here that I think will free my state and therefore my local people. and potentially create a better situation for people's lives down here.
Yeah.
But as far as like creating policy and no.
Yeah.
But what about if you just use that platform for 2 years to just be as loud as you can and you don't care about being reelected?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if that? Because you show me one of them that doesn't care about being reelected. I want to know who that person is.
They all said it. They all said it. Like I was in on those early calls, and truly all of our conference, like all of our calls were that, we're going to come in and whoever wins is going to come in and blow things up, and we're not going to care about getting reelected. And then you go in and it becomes extremely, anyway, it's I commend you. And
yeah, I mean, look, and I'm also at a different life point than a lot of these young people were when they were doing that. And if I were 28 years old and got in, I'd probably see that as a potential career as well, but as somebody who's not even really that into working, and doesn't need to work, it's just a different perspective for me. It's much more of an activist role. But I get it, like these young people. And that's what concerns me about people like Alex and Maxwell and people like that. It's like, you come from grassroots, that's great, but you also have to be able to make a living, have a career, take care of yourself, like all of these things. And that's reality.
Yeah.
And or for people that weren't able to have other work or were maybe in a hard time before they got elected. There's all sorts of stories about a lot of these progressives that are getting in there that lends itself to wanting to stay.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
It's very intoxicating.
I hear you.
Talking about a lifetime pension. You're talking about universal health care. You're talking about stock tips. There are things that
absolutely,
and especially, and it's so much worse on the Democratic side than it is the Republican side, because on the Republican side, most of these guys are from the private sector. If this isn't working out, they're going to go somewhere and make more money. Kind of like Congressman Ted Deutsch decided to do down here.
Right.
He was making his money working as making $175,000 a year. Then one of the AIPAC subsidiaries called him up and offered him triple what he was getting paid. He's like, all right, I'll go get the money. And so for them, it does become this intoxicating world. It's like Maxwell Frost is organizing this huge concert with AOC in Orlando recently. It had nothing to do with Gaza, but I can tell you that it's like, okay, this is where you see how the life gets to you, where it's this intoxication of being the quasi-celebrity, which is anything but what Congress is supposed to be.
Totally.
But
it's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
The one test that's out there is Rashida. She is the one person out of that whole group who really is willing to fall on the sword. Yeah. Now, will that cost her her seat? I don't know. I do believe that the people of Dearborn will move heaven and earth to make sure that no matter how much corporate filth they throw at her, because we all know that when she told Biden—
What's that mayor's name? That cutie from Dearborn. I think he should run for governor. I liked him so much when I saw him. Do you know who I'm talking? I cannot remember his name.
I can't remember his name, but yes.
See, but you know who I'm talking about.
The perfect example, and listen, Michigan is one of my favorite states, but it's a perfect example of how somebody like Rashida represents what electoral politics is supposed to be, and Gretchen Whitmer represents everything that it isn't supposed to be.
Well, yeah.
And there are people who talk about her, and she's going to run for president in 28. And people talk about her like she's the next great thing. People forget it's, again, everything that with the whole, FBI stuff, and she was getting kidnapped. Forget what's going on in Flint, and they still insist that the pipes are clean. Forget about what's going on in Kalamazoo and that paper mill that they have allowed to completely poison that community. And they're all talking about her like she's great. And then when Rashida comes out and says, I'm not supporting Joe Biden for president. This is somebody in a hot button race who's saying, I'm not supporting the president, even if it means Donald Trump. And then she comes out there and says, you're a really bad Democrat for saying such a thing. So to me, you measure it based on, are you more like Rashida or are you more like Gretchen Whitmer? You have to make a decision.
That's your barrier. But I will say that my congresswoman was one of the 12 Democrats that voted to censure her.
Of course she was.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And first of all, and I find that, forget why or their reasoning, right? Like the fact that those are our employees and they're so fucking insubordinate. The fact that they're spending their time censoring each other.
I know.
That in and of it, forget why or if that's whatever. It's
total waste of time and resources.
Yeah. See, I am not with that. And I will also tell you, when I saw Rashida Tlaib standing there and talking, crying, and I was on a rampage, not a single Jewish Congress member is standing with her. And that is sort of where I'm at in my head. Like I cannot abide somebody like my congressperson representing Jewish people, especially right now. It's horrifying. And this should not be this way.
And whether or not Nina Turner would have made any type of substantial impact, I think she would have been a much better leader of that type of a group. I think she just has that gravitas about her. But let's just say that she wouldn't have necessarily done much. She would have basically been, rendered somewhat ineffective. The idea that you have somebody like Shontel Brown who got in there because she was willing to completely sell out to AIPAC and PMFI, all of them. And she is out there touting those talking points like it's going out of style.
Gross.
That wasn't enough. When she wins her race, Debbie comes out and says, and I quote, "It was a mitzvah that Shontel Brown defeated Nina Turner." You see, there are rare exceptions.
Right.
This is an exception where if electoral politics makes sense, it's putting her in and getting Debbie out.
She's just toxic in general, and it's just horrible for our district. We also have local stuff, but regardless of that, I just, I feel like we can just do better.